Coming up on this week's episode of Podcast Unlocked, the world's #1 Xbox podcast, Cyberpunk 2077, already probably going to last you quite a while. It's going to be a big game, but CD Projekt Red is already talking about how it's going to be even bigger after launch. Plus, the Esrb will help parents be aware of those pesky loot boxes, an interesting rumor related to Mafia, and more coming up on this week's Podcast Unlocked. What's happening, friends? Ryan McCaffrey with you from the house. My house is your house at this point. I'm joined, as always, from their homes by Miranda Sanchez.
Hello, welcome to my living room.
Brandon Tyrell.
Hello, welcome to my living room.
And Destin Bam Legary.
Bams are back, baby.
Glad to have you all here. Oh my goodness, another week of Xbox. Thank goodness video games have continued in all this to help keep us sane. Still kind of a quiet news week, but we'll talk about some interesting stuff. Starting with, why not take the opportunity while we're here? Little self-promotion, got to do it. Miranda, every reason to be proud. Really cool Gears of War universe piece that you just put up this week. Can you talk about that a little bit and give people the quick Google instructions on how to find it?
Yes, I would love to. I got to do a really great interview with two members of the coalition about kind of the future of Gears of War, and they also gave me a really great asset. It's a complete timeline of everything they have so far for books, comics, and of course games. So it's everything on that timeline and where they take place, and it's really cool because it's get really granular into like this specific comic, and these three are in this moment of time or like in this time period. So it's really neat. And we really dug into kind of how they go about developing new protagonists and how they plan on carrying on the series beyond stories with just Marcus and Kate, because that's obviously a big challenge. I specifically called out like some franchises don't really grow well beyond their main stories. And like they have a big challenge with that, like Harry Potter, except for Cursed Child. That's a great play. But, everything else is like really tough. Like, how do you... One question I asked specifically is like, how do you top like the end of the world? Like, how can you possibly tell a story that's better than that? And like,
right,
how
the
can
raising of the stakes?
Yeah. And Bonnie Jima, the franchise narrative director at the Coalition, had a great answer for that. So I hope you will check it out. If you look up Gears Universe or Gears Lore, IGN, you should be able to find it pretty easy. So yeah, it's a big interview.
I thought it also served, when I read it, it served me well as a Gears Tactics story primer. Like, I actually didn't realize, I hadn't known when Gears Tactics was set, that it's set back earlier, and that it's a Diaz. So it's kind of a nice primer for jumping into Gears Tactics if you're going to play that on PC, because that's out. That's actually 2 weeks from today that game is out.
We're soon.
So that one's right around the corner. But yeah, awesome job on that, Miranda. That was a really fun read. And then I got a look at, for those of you who are Halo fans, Marcus Leto. He was the art director for many, many years at Bungie. He's the co-creator of Master Chief himself. He left and started his own studio a couple of years ago called V1 Interactive. And their first game is called Disintegration. Now, Brandon's covered the heck out of it in IGN first. I finally got my own look at the single-player campaign specifically. So if you want to read that preview, you can probably just search IGN Disintegration, and that'll since it's newer, that'll most likely be what pops up first. But yeah, it's Brandon. That one's an interesting one, and it is a first-person shooter, but there's a lot of strategy elements to it. But not really in a real-time strategy game kind of sense, more in a just like dynamic battlefield. I don't even quite know how to explain it sense.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of, I don't know if you ever played this series called Brothers in Arms.
Yes.
It kind of reminds me of that. There is a lot of, it balances the first-person shooter aspects because you're in this grab cycle hovering above the ground.
Yeah.
And you move up and down, left, right, forward, back in a Z-axis. And you're firing and shooting and launching abilities, but you're also sort of really intuitively controlling your troops on the ground and using their abilities. So there's this element of not only are you working with what you've got, but what everyone else around you has. It's this cool juggling act, and watching it doesn't really sort of peel back all the different layers in there. Playing it, actually getting your hands on it, it's a much different beast than it looks like it is just watching video. It's really interesting how they've sort of pulled both the action elements of first-person shooter and the strategy elements of sort of top view turn-based or strategy games, and it's something that's fairly unique.
Yeah, and I say this not as a criticism or a compliment, but I thought you can, when you learn that Marcus was the art director, he's an art director, and you look at Disintegration, and you know that he was at Bungie during the formative years of Destiny. He didn't stick around until it shipped, but you can artistically see a lot of the similar science fiction. It has, like, they could almost be cousin universes from an artistic view.
Yeah, there's this cool sort of almost gritty kind of retro sci-fi feel to it, where Destiny, I think, leans pretty heavily into the space or science fantasy. This definitely has a feel of like aged patina on top of robots, and I mean it's set in essentially the apocalypse after a crazy pandemic.
Yeah.
How
Go figure.
How
Yeah.
apt. But yeah, it does share a lot of the same sort of mechanical or visual guts of Destiny, but it's got this really kind of gritty, dirty sort of blue collar element to it that I like.
Yeah, and I thought it was even interesting that there were a couple of other little strange similarities isn't maybe the most fair or right word, but just coincidental funny parallels. Like there is a player, so the game is played from first person as Destiny is. There is a third person view player hub, like a social area where you can go and hang with people. It's like, that sounds like the tower in Destiny, but it's not you don't go there to set up multiplayer stuff the way that you do in Destiny. But I thought it was still kind of and you've got a lot of humanoid robot people as well. So there's some just interesting little parallels to Destiny from a just sort of not even mechanical, just mostly an aesthetic perspective. But yeah, it seemed pretty cool. It's I'm eager to get my hands on it.
Are they also called EXO, Brandon?
What?
The robot people in Destiny are called EXO.
No, they're called integrated, I think.
Yes.
Is that the term?
Okay. Yeah, because you have the naturals. Basically, you have they figured out how to transfer your consciousness basically into a robot body, and there's this faction of people that now want to go back to being human after being robots. So there's kind of interesting, and the story hopefully is going to be pretty cool. They're saying an 8 to 10 hour single player campaign. There's different grab cycles and you get a different crew on each mission on the strategy side. So yeah, definitely intriguing. I mean, we talk a lot about, hey, it'd be nice to have a genuinely unique first person shooter, and this will hopefully fill that need. Brandon's played it. I haven't actually played it. I just kind of got a hands-off demo here in the pandemic age of things. But in any case, looking forward to that one.
Yeah, and
also,
goes without saying, there's also a full multiplayer suite on that as well.
Yeah,
team-based 5v5 objective stuff where each you pick your crew, which is your grab cycle, but also the little squad crew members that you have, and they're all themed. One of them is like the crazy clowns. One of them are like the cybernetic, futuristic DJ kind of hacker style, so they've all got their own cool little aesthetics, but each of them plays a little bit differently, sort of like a hero shooter almost, or kind of a MOBA.
And then the one other quick sort of programming note I wanted to mention here before we move on to the news proper here in just under a minute is Cam Shea, the editor-in-chief of our IGN Australia team. He took a deep dive at Minecraft Dungeons, which, Miranda, I know you've played a little bit and enjoyed. I've been playing a little bit of the beta as well. And I have to say, again, just at the risk of repeating ourselves from shows past, it's pretty neat. My 8-year-old daughter she was curious to watch because she's really down the Minecraft rabbit hole right now while we're all stuck at home. But she kind of got bored of it because there's no crafting. It's just all killing and looting. But me as a Diablo fan, I thought it was interesting. So look out for that on IGN as well. All right, let's talk podcast news. There's plenty of IGN Xbox news to get to. Few things, but they are all of interest. Cyberpunk 2077, my friends, still on track for early September as of now. I would not place a lot of money on necessarily that release date sticking around because we've seen so many development teams impacted by the change in workflow from this. Now, that's not at all me saying the game's getting delayed. I'm just saying we'll see what happens with it.
They keep doubling down on it. They're like, we're good,
which is great.
Yeah, they have.
And I'm glad to hear that. But I'm just saying, well, if it slips, give them a break. Don't worry about it. But when it does come out, it promises to be a pretty big game. However, there is some major DLC already planned for it. Now, this comes by way of a translation from IGN Poland. So CD Projekt Red president Adam Kaczynski saying that expect expansion sizes to be no less than The Witcher 3. Now, Blood and Wine and Hearts of Stone, they're 40 hours. That's about 40 hours worth of stuff. So that's quite a lot. So now, as to when CD Projekt Red's going to talk more about this, Kaczynski told CD Projekt Red investors, this comes from an investor call, says, expect a similar scenario to what we had for The Witcher 3. So what do you guys make of this? Do you even, I mean, it goes without saying that every developer, every publisher wants to extend the life of their game, but it's almost like The Witcher 3 stuff was good, but man, who needed, there's already so much there.
I needed it, Ryan.
Yes.
I needed it.
There are plenty of people who are very into the
I know,
DLCs.
yeah.
I think this news comes as a very exciting announcement.
Welcome. Yeah. Witcher 3, one of my favorite games of all time. And those expansions, I mean, the base material in Witcher 3 is already amazing. And the expansion material almost seemed to like flesh it out even more. Like there was more personality in there. So I really like, I like everything that they're saying right now. Like more Cyberpunk sounds great. And we already know there's going to be a wait for multiplayer to come online. So this might help to bridge some of that gap because the wait's going to be substantial. So, there's nothing wrong with this at all. Like this is all good news.
So hearing this news, for me, the first thing that I jump to is, I wonder how they're going to implement this DLC. Are there going to be large sections of the city or the map that aren't unlocked? Are they going to add a place that we go to? And I'm just basing that off how like GTA has handled it in the past. I remember back in, I think it was GTA 4, you actually went to a different location and experienced Ballad of Gay Tony. Or am I incorrect in that? Or did they utilize the same map?
Boy, I'm trying to remember now. I don't recall Ballad of Gay Tony or The Lost and Damned having new content. But now I got to look it up now because now the audience is like typing furiously in the comments right now.
So that was then, and it was so long ago, I just can't remember off the top of my head. But I'm wondering how they're going to handle it with Cyberpunk. Is it just going to be a new narrative storyline that still takes place within the same city? Are they going to expand the size of the city? Are we going to be able to explore new areas? What would you guys like to see the most? For me personally, I'll go first. I would love it if they just had a killer storyline within the same world. Maybe like a building becomes unlocked and we have to take out some of the corporate types, and I'd be okay with that. That's one way where they could still have the structure there, but maybe it's locked off until they're able to finish the DLC and craft the storyline for that space. I'd be okay with that, and I would be really intrigued to see what they do with that, even if it means revisiting old locales with really, really good narrative beats. What about you guys? Miranda, any thoughts?
I want a new place to go to.
Yeah?
My hope is that everything's unlocked like as far as it can be, because obviously they can't build up every single building they have, and there are going to be things you can interact with, but I think it's a little bit more exciting to go to somewhere completely new to discover everything that's different there and not have to revisit places you've probably spent a lot of time in already.
Yeah, what do you think that would be? Do you think that would be like a new city, or what could they do?
South of the city. I don't know. I feel like there's a lot that you can do. I don't really know. Obviously, we haven't played Cyberpunk. We've only seen demos at E3. So it's kind of hard to say where exactly they would expand to. But I feel like if there's something going on with other cities nearby or something, it could be a nice way to keep going with a different kind of storyline that's exciting, but not going to impact what you're already doing in your city.
somewhere on the outskirts of town.
Yeah.
In the suburb.
I did check. My memory did hold up. Those 2 GTA 4 expansions did not feature new geography. They were in the same Liberty City. Yeah. So
okay, good to know.
All story, all story and missions, and they were both very good without having to have a new space.
What did Project Red do with Blood and Wine? I didn't play that expansion. Like, what was that like? Brandon, you played it, right?
Yeah, it was I'm really protective of Witcher 3 story beats, so I'm not going to get.
I don't want to know the story. Did they go to a different location? Was it in the same space? How did they handle that aspect of it, design-wise?
Little column A, little column B.
Okay, so there was new spaces.
He's just radio silent.
Yes.
I mean, dude, it's been like 5 years. I think the statute of limitations is up. On
Everyone
people are playing it right now. So.
That's true. That's fair. After the Netflix show,
that's the thing is after the Netflix show, that game sales of The Witcher 3 just skyrocketed, and I don't want to ruin it for anyone. What The Witcher 3 does really well is because the main story is strong. They really have a chance to kind of play in the gray areas around the main story too. So a lot of like the side quests, a lot of the expansion stuff that you get kind of takes you in different directions and allows you to play with different tones as well. I think, I can't remember if it's Blood and Wine or Hearts and Stone. One of them is much sillier than the other.
Yeah, I forget which one it is.
I can't remember which is which, but I think for Cyberpunk, like Miranda said, we haven't really seen it. So I don't really know how to answer that question because I don't know what the state of the world is going to be or what the state of the city or the character is going to be by the time that game is over. For me, with DLC, I always like stakes to be raised, to tie it back to what Miranda was saying earlier with Gears. So once Cyberpunk 2077 credits roll, you're like, okay, I want to see what the next big thing is, or it's something to be said for like going and exploring the little nooks and crannies, but we don't really know what those nooks and crannies are going to look like yet because no one's played the game. So I can't really speculate on whether there's a crazy new corporation that joins the fray for DLC, or if we just go and get some quieter side stories in the dark alleys of the city. I don't really know.
I mean, go ahead, Miranda.
Oh, sorry. For me, just wanting to have another place to go to too is mostly because I'm really selfish and I want to have like another experience to kind of keep what we already have going. And I know that's asking for a lot too for DLC. It's like, give me a whole new area, please. Thank you. I mean, just like you really want it to be something that adds on to your experience. It doesn't just like kind of revisit something else with a new story, which can still be really fun, but like I said, I'm being a little selfish when I ask.
I'm glad that Destin, you brought up GTA 4, those 2 big expansions in it because they're great analogs. We're talking about a major quadruple A open world game, so it can work both ways. It's these CD Projekt Red Cyberpunk expansions can work really well just with great story and great new characters and great new missions without necessarily needing a new physical space to play around in, because it's, from a game development perspective, it is very expensive to build new geometry. I don't have numbers obviously, but it's compared to just because in the expansion you're gonna definitely need new characters, new VO, new story, new missions. But if you have a new space as well, that's probably adding maybe as much or more work than the rest of that stuff combined. So it would be quite a tall order. Now the good news is CD Projekt Red is not constrained by money or time, really. They've got plenty of both. So if they do decide, hey, we want one or more of these DLCs to be set in a totally new place, they'll build that out. They'll build that into their plan, and they know that the odds are that they're going to make their money back on it with the long tail on the game. So yeah, I agree with you guys. It's going to be interesting. I admire their honesty, really, of just saying, hey, we're going to more or less stick to the Witcher 3 plan, because that was a plan that worked well for them financially, clearly production-wise, but also works for players too. So that's really what it comes down to there. Our next story this week, the ESRB. I know we go from we go from a really boring topic like Cyberpunk to a riveting, just absolutely gripping topic like the ESRB and ESRB ratings. But there will now be warnings for loot boxes right on game packages as part of the ESRB stuff. So they've created an in-game purchases rating label for games, and the label will feature in-game purchases, but the label is going to actually say includes random items. That is going to be their terminology. They say this new interactive element in-game purchases includes random items will be assigned to any game that contains in-game offers to purchase digital goods or premiums with real-world currency or with virtual coins or other forms of in-game currency that can be purchased with real-world currency, for which the player doesn't know prior to the purchase of the specific digital goods. Good Lord, this is a horrifically written
it's legalese.
Right? Yeah, you guys get where I'm going with this.
Basically, if you don't know what's in it by the time you buy
it. Yeah. Now, you might be wondering, well, why not just straight up call it loot box? Why not use that phrase? The gaming industry knows that phrase. Well, that was actually exactly the ESRB's point. They more or less said, it's kind of an insider term. They said, loot box is a widely understood phrase in and around the video game industry and among dedicated gamers, but most people less familiar with games do not understand it. Well,
my mom would not understand that. That's a good point.
And that's exactly the point. And that's who the by and large the ESRB ratings are for.
Mm-hmm. For sure. You got to remember, like, we're so in this bubble of gamer culture that to us loot box is just a term everybody knows, right? Go ask anybody in my extended family who doesn't play video games what that is, and they're not going to know what you're talking about. And that's the majority of people. And the ESRB has the challenge of communicating what these things are clearly and plainly to the mass audience and not just the gamer audience, because this is mostly protecting grandmothers and moms and people that aren't as versed in the gaming space to be informed when they're making their purchase decisions for their children and other people in their family. That's what I think the goal is anyway. What about you guys?
I think you're totally right. And it's just sort of ironic that if you're trying to cleanly communicate to mainstream that aren't familiar with games, read them that sentence and see what happens. You know, I mean, I really
the label only says in-game purchases. So that
no one will ever read that sentence again.
And now,
like now you heard it here,
with random elements or something, right? What is it? There's a bit in parentheses that says in-game purchases now with 100% more RNG or whatever it says on there. I think it's great. I mean, let's be honest. We all know a dozen people who were probably too young to be playing a game rated M for mature. So I'm not exactly sure how effective the ESRB ratings are outside of sort of covering it from a legal standpoint. Like the people who use it, I think this is going to be great and helpful. I mean, if that informs your purchasing decision, that's great. I don't know how much sort of traction you're going to get with something like this when we already have the rating system as it is, and it goes largely ignored.
I mean, you say that, but we can't really say how many people actually do or don't use it, because again, it comes down to that system being used by people who aren't necessarily in the game space or really understand a whole lot. So if some dad going out there doesn't know anything about video games, is looking at a game, but does know that they can look at this label to see what it's rated for and why it's rated that way, and that's helpful, and that's why it exists. So
totally, I 100% agree with that. Video game ratings are not as prevalent as movie ratings. Like everyone knows what a rated R movie is. I shouldn't say that. Far fewer people know what a video game rated M means, you know?
I don't know if I agree with that, but maybe.
Well, again, we're in this video game space, so.
Sure, but it says M for mature on the box usually.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is.
And I guess more and more game trailers are using the quick little, this product is rated M for mature at the beginning of a trailer. Although it does,
that's
my brain
the law.
is telling me it's not universal though. Is it? Maybe it is, and I've just tuned it out at this point.
That's the law depending on your territory, I think, because you'll see. I know
Peggy
the ESRB, Peggy has it. I know ESRB has to be at the front of trailers, and that was back when I did community management for a dev back in 2007, 2008. When did I start IGN? 2011. So 2010, the law was you had to have the ESRB up for 3 to 4 seconds at the beginning of your trailer. So they probably expanded upon that. So if you're marketing an M for mature title, you probably need the bump. Like I know GTA was like rated M for mature, and then they just go into their ad.
There's an audio requirement to it as well.
Yeah, you have some experience in that space, right, BT?
Yeah, but it's been, I mean,
it's been a decade for me, so it's hard to recall.
Now, the other little challenge of sorts to this is that more and more games are being purchased digitally, and the retail, the box is just physically less prevalent. Because I'm sure even parents are buying more digital games for kids and on the storefront. So it becomes sort of the onus gets put on Sony and on Microsoft and on Nintendo to face that stuff prominently on the digital storefront pages as well.
That's a really good point. I think this is good that it's going to be labeled. I don't think people realize how many games actually have this mechanic in them.
Yeah.
I'm hard pressed to think of a game that fewer and fewer games don't have this mechanic. Does Final Fantasy VII have anything in it that utilizes any sort of structure like this? I don't think so. I don't think. No.
Are there any microtransactions in it?
Resident Evil Resistance does, for example, like the PvP space. I believe. Don't quote me on that. I'll have to Google that. But I remember there were like hero enhancements or something in that game. So yeah, this is all over the place. So this is going to be pretty common on a lot of game titles. I'm going to look up that Resistance thing.
Yeah, I will say that the ESRB stuff on digital pages are pretty prevalent. Like
good. Okay.
It's very easy to find that.
Very glad to hear that.
Yeah, it does.
I mean, when I think about it too, I do feel like maybe the community has forced publishers to back off a little bit. Like I feel like we don't have as many gross, disgusting, predatory loot box conversations on this show anymore the way we did even like 2 years ago.
Since the Battlefront loot box thing.
Yeah.
I think that was a major point for it, as far as like turning points of just how gross and aggressive it was, and how I think there's a long time where people are like, hey, you have to make sure that these things do not impact someone's game. Like this can't be a pay to win situation. It can't be a way to get around something that's important. And it was that. So I think it's good that it's not good that it happened, but it's good that it's changed.
Would it be apathy or empathy? The fact that it's just so common that we're just like, I don't want to talk about it.
Well, that's apathy there.
That's apathy.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about it, I think.
Yeah,
it's just like, yeah.
A lot of them don't feel as predatory. If anything, it's just annoying because it's like, I just want to buy this one skin. Just let me buy it, please.
Right.
That's usually what it comes down to. But for the most part, I think stores are getting a little bit better at it, especially if there is like a game that was really bad about however it's trying to sell its skins or whatever it may be for cosmetics. And if the community has like some things to say about it, usually you will see something change, which is good.
Yeah, I talked to when I before the world ended and I was able to Valve for the IGN First on Half-Life Alyx. Actually, during the IGN Unfiltered interview that I did with Robin Walker, who's the creator of Team Fortress 2, he also is a designer and programmer on Half-Life Alyx. Obviously, Team Fortress 2 with the hats was a huge, one of the earliest sort of microtransaction-y games, and we talked about that. And I asked him, like, kind of, what do you think of the state of microtransactions in the industry today? And I mean, he had a very good gamer-friendly answer, which is, hey, let's just make sure we're giving people what they want without forcing anything upon them or being muddy about it. So, it does feel like publishers, being big corporations that want money, they were going to keep pushing and pushing and pushing until finally, to your guys' point, it was Battlefront 2 seemed to be where the community said, that's it. That's it. That's the line. Yeah. Back up. And I feel like hopefully that's the sort of place we've drawn the line in the sand now on this. So there you go. ESRB talk on Unlocked. This ratings gold.
We did it.
We did it. Finally, this week on the news side, just a quick one. This was actually left over from last week when we had a much busier show, but thought this was worth a mention for one specific reason. So Mafia 2 and Mafia 3 definitive editions have been rated by the Taiwan Digital Game Rating Committee. This comes, the citation for this is a tweet from the Twitter user Nibelian, which links to the website of the ratings board where the games were found to be registered by Take-Two Asia, PTE Ltd, and I'm guessing PTE is some sort of regional designation. I'm not quite sure exactly what, but I bring this up because, again, we even, I remember Destin last week, we talked about the rumors will cover and the rumors will not, but I bring this one up because it's usually when it's a ratings board from somewhere around the world, those generally tend to be real. Those generally tend to come to fruition.
Yeah, I mean, they have to disclose that they're creating these things. So, yeah, they have a little bit more credence because there's been a filing for their product. So, yeah, I see why you bring it up. Brandon was the Mafia guy, though. I played a bit of Mafia 3.
Yeah,
you played it. You played through it, right?
No. I did.
Oh, really?
I
thought
did
you
an
did for some
IGN.
reason.
No, I think Marty did the review, but I did the IGN first for it, and I did some content around it, and I enjoyed what I played. But what I heard from people who played that game through was that it suffered from sort of repetition. Like what they had was really, really good. There was just chunks of it recycled over and over and over.
I just read the plot synopsis and skipped to the ending, and wow, that game goes somewhere.
Yep.
The thing,
I won't ruin it for you in case you're gonna play it.
Yeah, I only played. Yeah, I guess if it's gonna come back around, it's better for us to not ruin it. But what I remember, I actually only ended up playing a little bit in a preview opportunity. But what I remember most is the whole mechanic that you could feed people to the alligators in the swamps.
Yeah, you kill someone or knock someone out and then throw them in a swamp, and nature takes its course.
Hot damn.
You got gatored, son.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
Gator done.
Wow.
Come on. Nothing? You guys, come on.
I had a Larry the Cable Guy reference in 2020.
Yeah, that just happened.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, the Taiwanese Digital Game Rating Committee Council, the TDGRC, definitely lends some credence to it. But I think also the fact that we're seeing a million remasters and remakes these days as a way to sort of bridge the gap until the next generation of consoles, as we see sort of every console generation. So I think that adds a lot of credence to it as well. And, I think Mafia 2 was a beloved game. I didn't personally play it, but Mafia 3 certainly had its own style and its own followers. So packaging those together as a remaster seems like I don't know if it's an easy win, but it's a smart win.
Well, we don't know if they'll be packaged together. They were both rated.
Oh, okay.
We have no idea, how they might come about. But yeah, I'm glad you brought up Mafia 2. I reviewed that for OXM. That tells you how long ago that one was. I gave it an 8, as I recall. And what I remember about that game is it was first of all a beautiful game. Like the art direction, the color palette. It was a just beautifully art directed game. The way the sunlight would filter through the like 1940s windows and the buildings, and I know it sounds kind of trite now, but again, this is back on, I guess, maybe the middle to latter part of the 360 era, but it was a really beautiful game. And but what its downfall for me, what held it back from real awesomeness was it was this pretty cool open world, but there just wasn't much to do with it, to do in it. There was the main story, which you just go from place to place and go where they told you to, but there just wasn't a lot of open world activities that you could do. So, that I would love to see that addressed if they're going to bring it back. But I suspect, if it's just a a remaster, they're probably not going to touch the content at all and just sort of bring the game itself back, which I'd be curious to take a look at it now with a fresh coat of paint. I mean, if they can get it running and looking nicely in 4K, sure, let's have a go. Let's see what's doing.
Yeah, but even by today's standards, though, I mean, there are publishers who do the open world game. I mean, look at Ubisoft, right? Like they can turn anything into an open world game.
They will find a way.
They will find a way. I know it makes me nervous because Mafia 3 had the exact same. I didn't think about it until you were describing Mafia 2.
Yeah.
Mafia 3 had the exact same problem, which was their recreation of New Orleans with New Bordeaux, I think it was called.
Correct. Yep.
Very beautiful, super detailed. But you would just drive long stretches of city blocks without, you see the same 5 people. Oh, it's the girl with the yellow top and the man in the brown suit, So I don't know if that's going to be addressed. And by today's standards, I worry that it's going to feel even more empty and even more vacant than
Good point.
It was when it was released.
Good point. Although I do have to add, just for historical fairness, your point stands, but Mafia 2 and Mafia 3 were done by totally different development teams.
Fair.
There's, of course, Hangar 13 picked up Mafia with 3, and it was the original developer that did the first 2 games. And Illusion Softworks, if memory corrects, if my memory stands. And they were based out of somewhere in Eastern Europe. I want to say maybe like Czech Republic, or they were a European developer, but very talented team. I wonder if the first game, as I'm remembering the first game now too. The first one was really good, and it was more of a linear. It had I feel like it had the best story of the 3. Again, not having played much of the third one, but 2 was really good. You're right though. It's going to be interesting to see how it holds up in 2020. And this actually reminds me of one other remaster related topic for you guys, because Brandon, what something you said made me think about this. I want to see what you guys think here. We saw so many remasters. We railed about it on this show, by and large, in the early part of this generation, which I cannot believe that's like 5, 6, 7 years ago now. We complained a lot on this show about just it was remaster at the beginning of the generation. And I feel like that went away and we finally got into new current gen games. But now I feel like, to your point, Brandon, remasters are coming around again. It's almost as if publishers now have seen that hey, we can kind of use these as generational bridges, financially speaking. It's not to say they don't serve a creative interest. Again, you get players that never played the original. Okay.
Well, absolutely. And especially when they're done like Resident Evil 2 and 3, right? Where it's not just a fresh coat of paint.
That's different though. Yeah, that's a full-on remake, which I'm all for. I think those remakes are great when they're done well, as Capcom has. But remasters seem just beginning of the gen, and now they're coming around again.
Beginning of the gen, they felt not great. Like they felt very rushed, and they weren't as good as they could have been. And I think now they're spending more time on them and making them correctly. And I'm pretty happy with the remasters, definitely the remakes, like you said, Ryan, that we've been getting. Can you give me some examples of the ones at the beginning of gen versus end of gen?
Well, let's see. Put me on the spot off the top of my head. Basically, anything Capcom was releasing.
I was just going to say, we had it unlocked. It feels like we had an unlocked segment there for 4 or 5 months where it was like, what is Capcom remastering this week?
Yeah, I mean, it
was Mickey Castle of Illusion. There was DuckTales. There was.
Oh yeah.
Oh, DuckTales was good.
I don't know if those are remasters so much as
they were. I think.
Upports. I don't know what the terminology we're gonna.
They're widescreen, so it counts.
Yeah.
There were some Resident Evil just straight port ups before they got into the proper doing what they're up to now. But that's Capcom, and then you had there were a lot of that just kind of came and went that I'm now, of course, completely blanking on. But it's it was a thing, and then it went away, and now it's back. So I wonder how long into the Series X generation we're gonna see more remasters before we move on. But
Yeah,
all right.
I'm sorry. You ready to move on?
No, go ahead.
We're running short on time.
Make that final point. Do it.
The final point is just like, it seems like one of the ingredients in the masonry. We're going to mix our metaphors here pretty hard. It feels like one of the ingredients in the masonry that like holds console generations together, right? Like last gen, next gen, and then there's this weird overlap period at the end of one gen and into the next gen where you get a lot of remasters, you get a lot of like AA games, you get a lot of double I and triple I, if you want to use that term as well. So like, you know, as everyone is ramping up to support a new generation, then you have more stuff bubble up to sort of bridge that financial gap, I think.
Good point. Yes, indeed. All right, loot box. Let's finish strong with a loot box and an unlock block trivia segment. This loot box question comes to us from the gamer tag Madrid Knows, all one word, Madrid Knows. And on this very topic, this is an amazing segue. You're welcome. I'm a good host. No, I'm not really. This is actually purely a coincidence.
You're a great host.
You're the remaster.
Nice. Madrid Knows says remakes/remasters seem to have been on the rise, like Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 Campaign Remastered, which coming to Xbox in 2.5 weeks. Anyway, he says, the question I propose to you in the panel is name one game due for a remake or remaster and one that's perfect the way it is and doesn't need to be touched. My example would be, sorry, Ryan, I took yours, is a remaster of all the Splinter Cell games in one collection. You're all amazing. Hope everyone is safe and healthy during these times. So I thought, excellent question here.
Name one game. I choose the entirety of the Splinter Cell series.
I'll allow it.
Okay. All right.
I'll allow
play
it
by those same rules.
Fine. So, all right. I'll go first real quick since that one, I would have said Splinter Cell, but I'll say Inside as a game that will never need to be touched from a remaster perspective. Just you couldn't improve it visually, and even when we get to 8K resolution in 2 generations from now, I think it's still gonna look just as good. And then I'll go super cult classic for a game I would like to see remade and brought back. Original Xbox exclusive by the name of Breakdown, which is a video game, first person, amazing sci-fi story. It was mostly melee. It was first person melee. There was some shooting in it, but the shooting was not well done. That would need to be patched up and fixed. But the story would hold up to this day totally, and I feel like even the gameplay, general gameplay would too. So that's my pick. Miranda was either swatting a fly or raising her hand. I'm not sure which.
Just trying to fix my camera focus, but I'm ready, and I'm excited that it went to be first, so I could take this one. Hopefully, Dustin wasn't going to say it. Mass Effect, please. Mass Effect.
I wasn't going to say it because I say it all the time.
So. Yeah, it could use a little help. Like I love that game so much, and the story is great. It just needs a little fine tuning. Like there's just some stuff there that doesn't really work as well anymore. I think a little bit of a remaster would go a long way for them just to fix a few things, buff it up a little. Be nice.
I love it. Let the rumors live on. I am so with Mass Effect remake.
What's really funny is, speaking of our going back to our other conversation, this is a perfect time for BioWare to do it, right? Because Anthem is kind of on the rocks.
Absolutely.
And Dragon Age, we're not going to see for 3 years. So
probably
right there, just slot it right in there.
You could not be more right. I mean, it would also be some goodwill for EA and BioWare as well after they have taken it on the chin from the gaming public. So that'd be a good way to win some trust back for sure.
Yeah. I'd love to play that again in an easier way, in a modern setting. One game, I guess I'll choose one, that would not need to be touched, and I would like it to be untouched forever, is Undertale.
Nice.
The graphics for it are kind of weird, and they're actually really pretty in some points. Like some settings are super pretty. But I think if you change anything about that game, it would lose something. So I think it's good.
Brandon, what do you got?
I'm keeping it Xbox centric, and I know that no one was going to choose this. So I would love to see remasters of original Xbox exclusives. There's a series called Kingdom Under Fire, and I talk about it all the time.
Look at you.
It's basically the way I describe it to people is, the big battle in the Lord of the Rings. It's the video game.
Yeah.
Whether you're talking Helm's Deep or Minas Tirith, doesn't matter. Orcs versus elves and stuff, and they just armies slash, and it's basically Dynasty Warriors, but set in sort of high fantasy, Middle Earth-esque stuff.
There were two of them, right?
There were two. Yeah, it was Kingdom Under Fire on the original Xbox, and I believe it was Kingdom Under Fire Heroes also on the original Xbox. Then there was a third game called Kingdom Under Fire Circle of Doom, which turned it into like a third-person action RPG kind of thing, which I wasn't a big fan of. And now Kingdom Under Fire 2 just came out, and it's a full-blown MMO, which I think they got too far away from the original formula. But give me KUF and KUF Heroes and remaster those bad boys for the Xbox One X, and I'm there day one.
Nice. What do you think should be untouched forever?
So I was going to say Limbo, but you already said Inside.
You can go with Limbo.
I think aesthetically and stylistically, those games, I mean, as long as you can run them as they came out, they'll never need to be retouched.
Yeah.
They're like great comics or cartoons or anime or
paintings.
Movies. Yeah, like paintings, like an interactive painting.
Yes.
Video games, interactive paintings.
Destin. Sorry. You got another one?
Yeah, I think because I was so in love with the Xbox Live Arcade. I think anything the Behemoth did really can stand on its own. Castle Crashers. There's that studio just really nailed their look and their tone, and those games can live on as is forever.
Nice, good answer. Destin, what do you got?
The game that never needs to be touched is The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker HD. They've already remastered it. No, I'm just kidding. Real answer, Grand Theft Auto 5. I think the single player campaign of that is fantastic. They've already touched it up for PC, so I think that one can live on in perpetuity. Also, Breath of the Wild could also just stand on its own. Games that I think could benefit from remasters or touch-ups at least. Demon's Souls, I'd love to see come back with multiplayer component. I'd love to see Super Mario RPG, one of my personal favorites.
Good one.
Specifically the one on the Super Nintendo. I would love to see that modernized.
Destin, you're supposed to pick one.
Metal Gear on the NES. 1 and 2 that actually explores the story of Big Boss. I think Konami has like a gold mine there that they're not touching on. And I was going to say Mass Effect, but it's totally fine. Miranda took it from me because I say Mass Effect all the time.
Love it. All right, let's quickly do trivia here. This is a good one. Oh, wait, dang it. I did not write down this person's name. I do that sometimes, and I feel really bad.
Dr. Halsey.
Try to credit next week. According to Dr. Halsey's journal, which was included in physical form in the box set for Halo Reach, what member of Blue Team, we were talking about Blue Team last week on the show, what member of Blue Team, these are just facts, these aren't the choices, so eluded the recovery/kidnapping team because the Spartan thought it was a game for their birthday and only came out of hiding because they were bored. Also took the clippers from the barber when they tried to shave the Spartan's head, and it took several soldiers to restrain them, and also was the fastest Spartan. So those are facts about the Spartan. Who was it? Was it A, Linda 058, Spartan 058, Kelly 087, Fred 104, or our friend John 117? I'm going to go Brandon's way first.
Kelly, B, final answer.
Destin.
It's Kelly.
Miranda.
I was also going to say Kelly.
Kelly's a badass. I don't know if you guys knew this.
Yeah, good job.
This is also from the books.
Right.
This is also from the books. She's awesome. Yeah.
Well,
what's funny is the God, what was it? The Reach Collector's Edition came with a version of Halsey's journal.
Mm-hmm.
That thing is so cool.
Mm-hmm.
All right, good job, guys. And everybody gets a point. I will tally those. And that will wrap it up for this week's edition of Podcast Unlocked. You can follow me on Twitter at DMC_Ryan. I told you about the disintegration thing I did at the top of the show. Destin, what do you got?
Follow me on Twitter at Destin Legary. I just manage time and projects. That's all I do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Miranda.
Hi, you can follow me at Havoc Rosens, Havoc with a K. Sorry, my camera keeps freaking out. On Twitter, Instagram, and pretty much everywhere else. I'm just working on cleaning up a lot of guides and getting those assigned. Please use our guides. Thank you.
Love it. Brandon.
Hey, you can find me on Twitter at Brandon Tyrell. I am currently working on our big Summer of Gaming event that is going to kick off soon. So stay tuned for that.
Great stuff. All right. Thank you, everybody. We will see you all again next week.